Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football. We are taking a trip to the SEC in Athens, Georgia, as probably the biggest game of the season. The number one Bulldogs play host to the number two Tennessee Volunteers. This Tennessee team, there is not much more of a magical team than the Tennessee Volunteers. And what Josh Heupel has been able to do specifically with this offense has truly been special. And we saw them make a massive they have one of the best offenses in the country, missing their best wide receiver in Cedric Tillman. He finally comes back. This game is going to be very, very good. Excited to get into it. Before we do, though, I just want to say thank you guys for the support you guys have shown the channel. Again, if you like the content and you like talking ball, consider subscribing. Over 2,000 subscribers. That really does mean a lot to the fellas. We do appreciate it, Dill. Without further ado, I'm going to kick it to you. What are your early thoughts on this game here?
I mean, this very well could be the game of the season right up there with, or at least for the regular season, right up there with Michigan, Ohio State and what that's shaping up to be, because that's probably the four best teams. And I mean, if Bama was going to play Georgia, it'd probably be up there too. But this is such a massive game, I feel like, and such a massive game for Heupel in that program because what he's doing and what he's building, I mean, he beats this team well on his way to a national title awfully early and make you think he could put a run together.
So I want to start with just talking about the obvious matchup. This Tennessee offense that what Hendon Hooker's been doing, completing 70% of his passes for over 10 yards per attempt. The wide receivers, nobody's really been able to slow this Tennessee Volunteers offense down. How they spread you out. And they gave Georgia some trouble last year. How do you think this Tennessee team basically can be stopped by the Georgia Bulldogs and their talented defense?
I don't think anyone's going to stop this offense. Like I think the Bulldogs might be able to slow them down a little bit. I think the Bulldogs are better than Alabama, but the issue is what you could have attacked on Tennessee in the past was their physicality up front. I mean, you take a really good Alabama defense, and they really didn't dominate that game on the defensive line, and I'm not 100% sure Georgia's better than that Alabama D-line. I think it's probably pretty close. And again, I think it has been disappointing for Bama in terms of what they've gotten from it. But I just don't think you can beat this Tennessee team up like you could in the past because they're playing really well up front.
That's probably the story of this Tennessee team and what's taken them from being like a solid top 20 team in the country to being one of the best teams in the whole entire country is the physicality on both sides. But specifically the offensive line. I mean, this offense is very similar. Hendon Hooker's still a quarterback. They still have some good wide receivers. Why they've had so much success even against the better defenses, I think largely is due to this Tennessee team can pass protect. And if you give Hendon Hooker enough time to hit those explosive plays downfield to guys like Jalen Hyatt, to guys like Cedric Tillman, Brew McCoy, he's going to make those throws. Hendon Hooker's a guy that a lot of college quarterbacks, they'll miss some throws. He is so accurate. There's very rarely times in games where you say Hendon Hooker, oh, yeah, he missed that throw. And if they can protect Hendon Hooker, like Tennessee's going to put up some points.
That's the thing is everybody knew they were going to have some freaky talent on the edge. I mean, getting Tillman back is huge, obviously. Jalen Hyatt's taken his game to a level I didn't think was possible because he's just dominating right now. But yeah, you even factor in how they're running the ball. They're running the ball extremely effectively against really good teams, including Alabama and the Kentucky defense that is awfully stout, and they could kind of do what they wanted to do. So I think this team's getting really well rounded across the board, physically much better, like kind of filling out the rest of the team, not just their offensive skill. And I mean, not to gloss over the fact that Hendon Hooker is just next level. Like he's
the odds-on favorite now to win the Heisman Trophy. I wouldn't complain. Though I believe that was your dark horse actually going into the season. Now he's in minus 110 as a Heisman. Good on you there. In my mind, if you want to stop this Tennessee offense, you got to just keep them off the field. And that's what Georgia's going to try to do. That's what teams have had success in the past doing. And Tennessee's defense has been much, much better. And this is a defense that you look at what they've been able to do. They're only allowing 2.9 yards per carry to opposing offenses, only allowing a 60% completion percentage. If Georgia wants to stop this offense for Tennessee, I don't even know if I'd use the word stop. I'd use the word slow down. Your best bet is just keeping them on the sideline and running the football and controlling the time of possession. That being said, this Tennessee team has a very good front seven. They've played very, very good. If Georgia can't run the football in Tennessee and needs to rely on Stetson Bennett to win in a shootout, that's going to be trouble.
Yeah, you can't sleep on this Tennessee defense. I think the Alabama game yet didn't look great, but everyone else they've played really tough on D, and you're right. They're filling it out. I think the two linebackers are really, really good players, which should help them in the run game, and hopefully dealing with the tight ends, because that's obviously the lead dog in that Georgia offense at this point, with Darnell Washington and Brock Bowers especially, who's a freak. But if you can get those athletic tight ends to give them a better matchup than maybe some of these other teams are able to provide, maybe it does go a little way of, again, if they can just be solid on defense and not make it a total shootout, I think they should be in good shape.
Yeah, and I really do think that the story of this game is the Bulldogs rushing attack. Dejon Edwards averaging 6.3 yards per carry. Kenny McIntosh averaging 5 yards per carry. They run a lot of 2-3 tight end sets. You're not going to see many better blocking tight ends in the country than Darnell Washington. And quite frankly, Brock Bowers can just do it all. I mean, he's a very good blocker too, even though he is their leading receiver as well. I think this is what the game comes down to. Tennessee, Stetson Bennett needs to take care of the football. He got a little loose with it against Florida. Tennessee forces 2 turnovers a game on defense. They do a very good job doing that. They have guys in the back end who can get their hands on footballs. Georgia's going to need to run the football, control the time of possession. If you look at how Michigan was able to beat Ohio State last year, that's what it is. Like, you aren't going to be able to stop this Tennessee team. If they get enough touches, they will be able to score points on the offense side of the ball. Your best way of doing it is just not letting them touch the football. That's what Michigan did to Ohio State last year. I think that's what the Bulldogs need to do on Saturday against Tennessee.
Yeah, and that's what you saw. You saw this Bulldog team be really disruptive against Oregon. And Oregon's shaping up to be a very good offense. Their offensive line's really good, and they kind of hammered them. And I know Georgia's not putting up the sack numbers that maybe you'd expect. I think they have 10 on the year, but again, I just don't think teams drop back and pass on Georgia, because you can, so they're just playing them different. You even watched the Oregon game. I know that defensive line had the game taken over. Like they had Bo Nix panic pretty quickly, and the physicality was just too much for a team in Oregon that I don't think is your classic Oregon. I think that is a very tough team, and Georgia made them look very pedestrian. So I don't know. This game's really tough for me. I want to say Tennessee just because, getting to the pick, I'm looking at a +9 line. I feel like Tennessee is going to be really competitive in this game, but Georgia has a funny way of making these good teams look really not good when they bump up against them.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I think this game for me is just going to be a fan. This is one of the best games we'll see all year. I'm going to kick my feet up and watch it on the couch, probably not having any action. If I did have a lean, and this is just the eyeball test, that's a lot of points for Georgia to cover against a Tennessee offense that's going to put up points. And again, I think the story of this game, is, does this game turn into a shootout where you're leaning on Stetson Bennett to outscore Hendon Hooker in that Tennessee offense? Or is it more of a grinder game where Georgia's establishing the run, winding down that clock, and kind of making it a more physical game and less of a shootout? If that's the case, I think Georgia wins. I think they probably cover the points. But if it turns into a shootout, you don't want to be getting into a shootout with Hendon Hooker with all those weapons on the offense. I'd probably be riding with Tennessee. That's what it comes down to. I'm probably leaning Tennessee +9, but this game is going to be a very good one. I'm excited to watch it. This is going to be good. Again, we appreciate you guys and all the support you guys have shown. If you guys do like the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.